How's it going, guys? It's Eclipse here and welcome back to a update news where we look through all of the information that Wargaming have provided for, of course, the new tech tree tanks, including the stats. We had a quick look last week at what these tanks are likely to be like in terms of the armor, what they typically play like, which ones are the best. But we're going to have a look at the tanks in detail as to the statistics that Wargaming have given them, as well as some of the update news and info that Wargaming have given during the TANKFEST stream. And of course, I was indeed at TANKFEST, unfortunately not for the live stream since I was just away on holiday. But of course, being in an airport isn't necessarily on holiday. But at the same time, hopefully you guys enjoy this video and we'll take a look at all of the information, including some of the information that won't have been covered in the previous news video since I wasn't here. But straight away, let's have a look at these Italian TDs. And if you want to see the typical armor model, how it works and stuff like that, then I highly recommend you have a look at the dedicated Italian TDs and what to sort of know about them video. And I'll link that at the end of this one as well as in the pinned comment, so you will see what these tanks' armor is actually like. Because, you know, Wargaming typically only give us like a kind of a snapshot of what the armor, like the best places of the armor, but it doesn't actually give you the live info and stuff like that. But straight away, we come in with a tier 5, which is this M41. It is not typical of the Italian TDs as you get further down the tech tree. It is a non-turreted TD, this one, and essentially it comes in at tier 5 leading from the tier 4. But this tank is all about having kind of a fast fire rate with the main gun of this thing. This one is, of course, fairly mobile, you know, with its high power to weight ratio, considering the top speed, not particularly too high, 35 kilometers an hour, and of course, 8 degrees of gun depression, which is nice for a tank like this. Of course, the yaw limits are one of the biggest problems with these non-turreted tanks because you've only got 16 degrees to the left, 16 degrees to the right, and total 32 degrees. So you don't even have a decent arc with this thing, which means you're constantly going to have to be moving. So anything that improves your accuracy in these tanks is going to be super good for if you're trying to hit people on the move, that sort of thing. So I highly recommend, if you are going to play this tank and a couple of the tanks, to try and improve the accuracy when moving and of course turning your hull. And as you get later on, you want to be adding in perks that improve the accuracy when turning your turret, things like snapshot, etc. So yeah, really important to do that. But essentially these things have 2000 damage per minute, which at tier 5, very good. If you can keep this thing firing, it is insanely good for this tier. Penetration wise, fantastic, 146, more than enough to go through most of the tanks you'll be coming up against, even the tier 7s and the tier 7 heavies at that. And then even if you want to fire a little bit of premium, which can be useful in some situations, I highly recommend taking a few. You don't need to do it in this tank and at this tier, but it's more for those tier 7 games where, you know, you just won't pen if you find something like, I don't know, a KV3 or something and it's angling, etc. So yeah, I'd highly recommend checking that one out. But 195 pen, this tank is solid. Accuracy is kind of lackluster, 0.37 with such a high reload. It makes it annoying to play with regards to hitting shots consistently. But of course, on console, we have good accuracy and of course better accuracy than most of the other games that we have. So World of Tanks PC, World of Tanks Blitz, and of course, yeah, much better accuracy. But reload time 3.2 seconds, aim time 1.7 seconds, which is decent, and you're going to be able to make it work. But yeah, it's just a case of trying to make this thing work entirely. Now, the next tank that we do have is then the Basotto, and World of Tanks console have also gone for the standard high alpha gun, which this thing has on PC, and it's a bit of a devil, to be honest with you. It gets 440 alpha on its standard rounds, only 105 pen, which is kind of lackluster for those tier 8 games that you can play. But if you are playing it in tier 8 games, you have fantastic penetration on the premium rounds, 230, and 360 alpha means you can even trade with some of the tier 8 heavy tanks, which is really good. So yeah, nice to see that. But in addition, we then have 0.44 accuracy, so once again, not particularly the best accuracy in the game. So yeah, it can be a little bit annoying. An 8-second reload though, meaning that the damage per minute of this tank if you're using standard rounds, is 3,300, which is crazy, and about 2,300, 400 sort of range when you're using the premium rounds, which is definitely worth taking for those higher tier games, and if you can't find the weekly armored targets. But yeah, still very, very good. High power to weight ratio, meaning it gets up to top speed, maintains that top speed. And in fact, it might be worth using some of the speed boost equipment that is going to allow you to increase the top speed of this thing, maybe, dependent on how aggressively you want to play it and how speedy you want these things to be to relocate, etc. But still limited by that yaw limit, so these are kind of the annoying things about playing these tanks. But yeah, still a very, very good tier 6 tank destroyer, and kind of in the realms of being something like the Jagdpanzer 4 and that sort of thing, the SU-100, except this one has slightly more alpha. For that 440 makes a big difference, but 3.2 second aim time is a bit rubbish. But yeah, you have a longer reload time, so it doesn't make so much of an impact, and the view range pretty decent as well for a tier 6. So moving on from the tier 6, we have the tier 7 SMV CC56, and what does this tank have? Well, this is the tier 7. It is the first tank in the line that actually gets a fully, not fully traversable turret, but a limited traversable turret, and of course with a slightly better yaw limit. So you've got 30 degrees on one side, 30 degrees on the other side, so you don't get a full 180, and in fact it's only a third. So it's really annoying to be able to use these tanks with the turret, and they have horrible hull traverse and turret traverse, meaning that it takes an eternity to actually turn around with these things. So as soon as someone gets around the side of you, it's basically curtains, so super annoying. But with these tanks, they do get an autoloader and of course slightly better armor than the counterparts that we just saw. And if you want to have a look at the armor, once again, have a look at the actual video that we looked at in the armor model, where the weak spots are and stuff, and how you can take them out. But essentially, you have 320 alpha, you've got 3 shells in the clip, so a total of 960 damage you can deal with these things. You have an intricate reload of 7 seconds, so once again, it is not particularly great. You've got a long time in between the shells, and it makes these slightly more annoying for anyone that is trying to play these, especially as a new player or anyone that wants to play the autoloaders in the game. These are probably not the first ones I'd go with. You have 10 degrees gun depression, so you can use ridge lines. It's very good at doing that. The turret armor is much better than, of course, the superstructure of the tier 6, which is basically pennable by most things. And of course, this one is the tier 7, top speed of 31 kilometers an hour, pretty lackluster power to weight ratio comparatively to the previous, but it does get better as you go through the tech tree. And yeah, 350 meters of view range, so it gets less view range than the previous tier. So yeah, brilliant. Either way, penetration wise, it's okay on the standard rounds, 175 and 212 on the premium, so you actually have worse premium rounds than the previous tier, because, you know, wargaming. But either way, it looks like a decent one, and I think it's nothing to write home about, but definitely an interesting one for sure. And then you move on to the tier 8, which is the SMV CC67, which essentially comes up against tier 10s as well, of course, of tier 9s, tier 8s, etc. But essentially this one gets slightly better speed limit. It gets a similar power to weight ratio, nothing outrageous. 10 degrees of gun depression, same sort of turret armor, of course getting a cupola, which can be a weak point and on the left and right hand side, but they are very hard to hit, especially if it's using the gun depression. Lower plate is pretty solid, but it does have like a plate underneath. And of course, once again, have a look at the video on the armor model of these tanks if you're interested. Your limits get better, 35 degrees to the left, 35 to the right, allowing you to have 70 degrees of kind of spread on your gun, which is nice. But once again, the hull and turret is awful. And yeah, 3-shot autoloader, 400 damage, total of 1200 damage that you can deal with, 226 pen, which is nice, and 300 premium pen, so very, very good with the premium pen. But of course, once again, damage per minute is awful, and it's also annoying to get out that damage because of the fact that you have a 7-second intraclip reload. So once again, probably not the best tanks in the game. Definitely not going to be broken, but a little bit boring to play up against, since they do have fairly strong frontal armor if you're coming up against them at the same tier. But then we move on to the tier 9, so this is the Contracaro 1 Mark II. This tank has the similar sort of thing. It gets a slightly more angled turret and of course slightly better turret armor, and that allows it to be one of the better ones in the tech tree line. 1900 hit points, which is good. Power to weight ratio kind of sluggish, and of course the hull and turret traverse speed go down on this thing, making it a 40 degrees a second total if you're using the turning speed of the vehicle plus the turret. And of course, when you have such a low yaw limit, so only 40 degrees to one side, you can only use the turret traverse for that initial engagement. So as soon as you hit that limit, you're then relying on the fact that you're going to have to either back up into a building to avoid anyone getting actually fully around the side of you and then just circling you to death. And of course, then you're also going to, or alternatively, you're going to have to make sure that you turn well in advance and clip them out before they can fully, like, basically ignore where your gun is going to be, and they're just going to get around and just basically stay behind you, and there's nothing you can do about it. So once again, very boring tanks in my opinion in terms of how they play, since, you know, you're basically relying upon the fact that they're not going to be able to rush you. It means making individual plays where you're on your own or like with maybe one other person. It usually doesn't end too well, so you need a little bit of team support, but of course team support on World of Tanks is not usually very good. I know you probably already know that, but with this tank, once again, 8-second intra-clip reload, so it's longer, an extra second, but you do get 4 shots in the clip with this thing with 490 alpha, so it's got quite high alpha. You're looking at, what's that, 1960 total damage in the clip, so pretty good, but it is going to take you 24 seconds to fully unload the clip, so, you know, not particularly amazing. And of course, a 26-second full reload as well with this thing. So yeah, kind of lackluster once again. 10 degrees of gun depression, armor very good, and yeah, 380 meters of view range is okay, and starting to get better in the tech tree. And then finally the Minotauro. So this is of course the tier 10, and this one has pretty strong armor. Once again, plays very much similar to the previous, except this one is even more sluggish. 12 power to weight ratio. Oh, not very good. Hull traverse, once again, terrible. Turret traverse, once again, terrible. So 42 degrees total. And actually, if you then use the turret as well and then hit the yaw limit, it's a 24 degrees a second, which means it's going to take you 15 seconds to fully rotate your entire tank 360 degrees. And when someone's skipping around you like a light tank at 70 kilometers an hour, there is no chance you are keeping up with them, and essentially they can just farm you of all your hit points. So making sure that you are far enough back and avoid the YOLO is super imperative with these tanks. This one does indeed get slightly better yaw limit, so you've got 45 degrees to the left, 45 degrees to the right, giving you a total of 90 degrees spread from the center point of your gun, which is pretty decent. I mean, it's nothing outrageous, but it's slightly better than the previous ones, and it's definitely going to be okay with regards to that. And it gives you a little bit of flexibility, more so than being a non-turreted tank destroyer. But 2.3 second aim time, slightly better than, of course, the lower tier ones, but yeah, still not amazing. But at the same time, pretty good for the alpha that this one will kick out. 530 damage per shell with the standard round, and of course, the same with the premium rounds. Premium rounds have 330 heat pen, which is very good. And then the final rounds are HE, but the HE on this thing has 130 pen, so very good at getting up against mediums and of course light tanks in the game, which I'd highly recommend you guys check out. And of course 700 damage with that, so very good. Kind of makes you almost compete with something like an E4 if you do decide to load a HE clip. But remember, loading HE in these tanks doesn't work out all too well, because unless you can find multiple opponents that are weakly armored, maybe at the end of the game where it's 3 versus 4 or something like that, and all of the tanks left have low amounts of armor, like thin armor plates, things like the French light tanks, French medium tanks, Backchat 25T, etc. Then yeah, maybe it'd be worth to load a HE clip. But for the most part, I don't usually take any sort of HE rounds in tanks like this and in autoloaders in general, because we don't get intuition in which we can swap the entire clip of an autoloader. Of course, you just resets your reload entirely. But Of course, with this one, 8-second intra-click reload, damage per minute slightly picks up 2,800 with this thing, so it's slightly better. But of course, yeah, 5-shot autoloader, 8-second reload, so a total of, 32 seconds to fully clip out all of your shells. Yeah, I mean, there's very rare occasions where you're going to be able to fully clip someone out in these tanks, which is why it makes them imperative to both be aggressive, have team support, and be situational, and use armor where you can get hold down. So they're quite limited in the sort of playstyles where they can be used, but it does mean that they can have outrageous games when they do get into those positions because they are so good in them. But, of course, relies on a load of factors. And if you catch one of these things in the open, it's basically curtains for these tanks as they are so slow and horrible to turn. So that's kind of the overview of these. Hopefully that gives you an indication that they are very similar to what the PC version have. There's not much changes, and essentially they're going to play very much like they do on PC, except the fact that they have intuition, so they can swap rounds to the HE and stuff like that, whereas we don't have that. So these tanks are going to probably be worse than PC. But yeah, I mean, overall, think they're a good addition to the game. I'm looking forward to playing them. I think it'll be something interesting, but of course, they are usually quite boring. They're not suited to my playstyle at all. I'm more of a medium player, but of course, if you are a tank destroyer player and one that can use armor and of course be aggressive at the same time, then yeah, these tanks are going to work well for you. And it's something extra, something new, something that isn't necessarily a bog standard heavy tank single shot autoloader, or a single shot even, rather than having the autoloader and auto reloader that some of these tanks have. So yeah, just keep an eye on that, and of course let me know what you think of the new Italian TDs. Are you excited, or are you kind of lackluster with what these tanks are going to be like when they do come into the game? But wiping that out of the way, let's take a look at the update notes that Wargaming have given and some of the info on the future of World of Tanks console from the TANKFEST live stream and of course the previous stream that they've done on the game. Now we'll take a quick look at the update notes from last week, since, you know, we didn't actually cover them on the channel, and it gives an update and a refresher to you guys to make sure to do some of these things. But essentially what we have is 2 new tanks. If you've already seen them in the game, we have the FV4201 Chieftain Proto, which is the Chieftain prototype at tier 9. It's on World of Tanks PC. It has been for a little while. It was released in loot boxes, I believe, and essentially it's a Chieftain at tier 9 but has slightly worse statistics. The armor doesn't work as well, and essentially it is a prototype of a Chieftain. You can see here armor model kind of lackluster with regards to a few weak points. You have a cupola which can be penned, you have the side weak point, you have the lower plate, you have the upper plate which can be penned if you're looking down onto it, and just a few areas where you can pen it in through the tracks here, which if they're angling like this, you can just go straight through this inner drive wheel right here. So yeah, a few weak points that come with these tanks. It is of course a kind of premium, if that makes sense, but not really a premium. But essentially it is a very, very good tank in general. If you can keep the gun firing, it has HESH rounds as well, or HE with good pen is what I like to call it. 120 pen, 515 alpha, which is nice. Hull traverse and turret traverse, you know, they're okay, nothing outrageous. Fully traversable turret, 50 kilometers an hour, so it's fairly fast and mobile. And power to weight ratio is pretty bog standard for the heavy tanks at this tier. And yeah, looks like a decent one, 2,000 damage per minute, 1.9 second aim time, so very good, and 0.35 accuracy, also pretty good for a heavy, 400 damage as well. So looks like a decent one. Look forward to jumping in this and doing a review for you guys. And of course, let me know if you've played it and what you think of the tank in general when you've played it in the game. And of course, if you tried out the new map or one of the new maps, but we'll look at a new map in a second and the community challenge for that map. But essentially, you can purchase it in the game for essentially minimum of 11,500 gold, a discount at the moment. So yeah, hopefully you guys did enjoy the Chieftain Proto. If you bought it or if you're looking to buy it, we'll do a full review so you guys can check that one out. And then of course the new Cold War vehicle, which is the M3A1 Bradley. And this is a escalation era Western Alliance light tank using a fast firing gun with tow missiles as well, as you can see on the turret. And of course, gameplay tips you have: use your main gun to engage lightly armored tanks and then deploy the tow missiles to basically launch them into the garage and ammo rack people, because that is basically what Cold War is with the tow missiles. Hopefully they'll do something about them, since they are pretty OP in the right sort of tanks. But yeah, tank characteristics, you have a 50% silver bonus as a premium tank. You also have a pretty decent tank XP bonus as well, 25%, and a crew XP bonus of 10% as well. 9 degrees of gun depression, 61 kilometers an hour top speed, which isn't amazing, to be honest with you, and definitely could be better. But of course, maybe you want to use the speed boost equipment to make sure you get into position faster, and of course sneak up on opponents and use the camo. The tow launcher has essentially 800 pen if you're using premium rounds, which basically everyone's going to do because it's Cold War, and 1100 damage. Yeah, very, very good. Reload time 45 seconds, so you can basically just sit and reload. It has a clip size of 2, which is essentially a double pumper. Of course, this did originally have 4 shots in the clip, which was apparently a little bit OP, so they removed that, and the interclip reload has also come down because it has a 2-shot kind of missile launcher. So if you think of the AMX-13 CCSA or something like that, the French light tank that has the tow missiles, then essentially, yeah, it's a similar sort of thing. So yeah, looks like a pretty decent one, and I'm sure it'll be really fun if you actually pick it up in the game. And when you look at the price of it, 9,600 gold is cheaper than the previous, and it's going to be better for earning silver than the Chieftain Proto, since it didn't offer any silver bonus. But there you go. A pretty decent one by the looks of it, but of course we'll have to review it. And of course, if you play Cold War and you've got this tank, you probably know a little bit more about what this tank is about, and whether it is OP. I have no idea, but let me know in the comment section down below. So of course we did hint at a new map, and it's essentially a community event where we can get ourselves the new map, which is Nebelberg, or Road to Nebelberg, which is essentially there's 2 different types. There's one on Cold War and there's one on World War II. The Cold War one, slightly bigger, of course, has all of these standard game modes that we have in the game, and essentially is a big version of this town map here, which you can see. There's a few pictures that we have. I do believe this was like a big battles one on PC, but then they like had it a much bigger map. Of course, you'll have to let me know in the comments if that is true. I believe it was like a huge grand battle map or something like that. But essentially what you have to do is get 7 million total points in the game. And of course, it's been out for 3 days, which I don't believe anyone has completed yet. Or at least we haven't as a community completed it yet. And essentially, as we go through, we'll get similar sort of rewards to what we've had in the past from the community map event sort of things. And essentially, yeah, 7 million points will unlock the actual map, and we'll be able to play it from whenever that date is that we do reach that goal. And of course, you have a load of XP boosters and premium consumables that you get from this event, which is essentially just a additional extra from just playing the game. You earn points by essentially destroying 1 or more tanks in any number of multiplayer battles. So yeah, essentially 1 point for the game. So yeah, I don't think it'll be too bad. And they did end up reducing what the requirement to actually complete this. So yeah, a fairly decent one. And of course, a new map that we'll have to have a look at when it comes out in the game. But more importantly, we have some information on the Q&As from the TANKFEST live stream, and some information regarding from the previous one, and some Q&As from that as well. So, TANKFEST stream notes, we have a few. So, first one is new Cold War medals coming next season related to eras and ATGMs. So, of course, we already knew about that. That's come into the game, which will be nice when the new season comes live. French Cold War tanks, very light tanks with great mobility and secondary weapons, which includes Leclerc, the commander, essentially, coming in. Then the Calliope Resolutions reward, fast firing, not doing crazy amounts of damage, possibly tier 6 or 7. It has a 75mm gun and unguided rockets, so essentially it is like a RPG for those of you which know. And essentially it's just going to fire in a straight line. It's not going to be able to move, but it will be in World War II. So yeah, rockets in World War II. Let's just hope it's not ridiculous and the damage isn't doing a whole lot. That would be good. Something in a good balance, you know, where it's dealing maybe a couple hundred damage would be good, rather than, you know, being able to blast off turrets with like 1,000 damage or something crazy. More training scenarios are coming on Tuesday with an advanced training menu aimed at teaching new players specific mechanics like multi-turret, siege mode, etc., which is good. Any new training modes, anything to do with helping the player base learn is good. There is tons of content on YouTube that you can have a look at, but of course you shouldn't have to go onto a YouTube to learn the core mechanics. It's more about like learning from experienced players on how to use those mechanics to, do better, etc. And hopefully you'd learn a couple things on this channel as we go through. And I'm hoping to start producing some more videos which are going to help you guys to learn the game, some things that are more like guides that will come and sprinkled in here and there, as opposed to just blasting out a load of gameplays which you guys like, but hopefully they'll be more useful if we make them into like a specific video looking at a couple tanks and how you can play them and that sort of stuff, working on just quality over necessarily uploading every single day, as I think you guys should hopefully enjoy that more than just a simple cut commentary looking at different games. Of course they'll still be in here, but I want to make sure that I am providing some content which will be good for everyone and a bit more generic on how you can play better. So that's the idea with those. We have new event battle mode coming aimed at working year round, separate from World War II and Cold War. The first event is a 7v7 control mode with single tier matchmaker. Okay, so this looks pretty good. So a 7 versus 7 looks pretty neat. I'm looking forward to that. Respawns and no artillery. So we're going to be able to respawn. It'll be a 7v7 and there's going to not be any artillery. So the first team to reach 1,000 points via destroying tanks and capturing bases wins. This mode doesn't affect Marks of Excellence. The first beta is coming on July 7th, which is tier 8 tanks, and will run through the weekend. You know what? This is amazing. This is exactly what I wanted. Something new, something novel, something better, and the developers have at least provided that. Hopefully when it drops in the game, it's not too buggy. Of course, we have no idea. The game could be awful. It could not work properly. I have no idea, which is, of course, why I'm giving you that clue there. It could be amazing. The idea, the concept, really, really happy with how it's going to hopefully go. And I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. But of course, with something new, expect there to be slight bugs, expect there to be a few things that aren't going to be 100% like correct. Of course, this is the beta, so just keep that in mind when you're playing and don't get too arsey, of course. The best thing for us to do as a community is to give them the thumbs up that creating stuff like this is good. It is good for the game. It's stuff that is additional. And if we just moan about it all the time, which, rightly so, if it's bad, if there are things that are bad, it's good to give them a constructive feedback rather than just moaning about it and then they basically never do it again, which is, of course, something that we don't want to see. We want to see new content. We want to see new things and trying new things. And hopefully this will be a good run and hopefully you guys will enjoy it. I have no idea what it's going to be like. I've never played it. I've never had access to it. It'll be interesting to see. And hopefully we'll do a live stream looking at the event and what sort of rewards and stuff we're going to get in store for the event. So yeah, looking forward to see that. And of course on July 7th, so not too long to wait actually, so look forward to that. The new premium Cold War Era 3 TD tank, so the Object 47A Molot, or Malot. I don't know how you want to pronounce it. It might be something other. It may actually be M-O-L-O-T. I don't even know if you're supposed to abbreviate it or whatever. But insane armor, 1300mm of hull armor and great turret armor. It's got a lot of pen and a huge gun plus a 20mm autocannon. Looking forward to that. And then, of course, a Nebelberg first look around the map. And for full details, including pics and clips of the above, please check out the video on YouTube, which, of course, you can do yourself. So yeah, it was really, really interesting to go to TANKFEST, of course. Maybe I'll drop on some videos right now so you can have a look at some of the stuff that actually happened at TANKFEST. So yeah, I was really, really enjoyed being there. And of course, yeah, it was super, super fun to see everything. And of course, if you are going to be there next year, I probably will be as well. And we'll make more of an event and hopefully I'll be there through all of the 3 days, as I was only there for just one day and for like half a day. Ended up spraining my ankle, so meant walking around and doing all that sort of stuff was perfect. And of course, it happened literally the day before my holiday. really, really good planning there. Definitely super fun. A nice little trip to A&E, thinking that I'd broken my foot. That's always good. And walking around with a swollen ankle for like the last week, and literally no better now than when it first happened. So yay, love it, love to see it. But hopefully we won't have one next year and be able to enjoy the event at its fullest. So I highly recommend you guys check out some of the videos on TANKFEST. There'll be loads, and maybe I'll actually just do a dedicated kind of shorts video, which you can have a look at some of the clips from TANKFEST, and of course some of the stuff that we have, and maybe I'll even drop in a little giveaway in there. I'm not going to guarantee it, but just keep an eye, as there might be one sprinkled in there somewhere. So just keep an eye out for that. And of course the short video where we look at that, I think that would be a better way of actually adding that one in, rather than adding in the clips now. So more of you will see it, and hopefully it will give you a rundown of a few things that happened during TANKFEST, and maybe I'll do a little video dedicated to it in the week. But of course there are some Q&As which were asked at TANKFEST. So can we get some adaptive skins for Cold War that changes based on each environment? It's definitely something we probably could add, but it would take a lot of work, which I agree. It's kind of one of those things where would we rather see developing in certain areas, or would you rather see camos that change colour? You know, would you like to see new event modes? Would you like to see new tanks, new tank lines, or do you want like camo? It's kind of one of those, you know, wargaming console don't typically have a huge budget. That's of course from my own personal experience of playing the game and seeing what happens, you know, comparatively to PC. Console is a lot smaller. We don't have the budget usually to be able to afford to actually do massive changes and stuff like that, or have the range of changes that some of the other ones have. And of course, something that could just basically improve the game is probably preferred over something like a camo for me personally, but I would have no problems if they added this in. I just think like, yeah, I'd like to see some of the other stuff being added. And if we can do all of that, then that is amazing. But yeah, hopefully we'll see it in the future. It's something maybe they put on the back burner, which would be cool to have. Can we get our ping info in milliseconds instead of the bars? We already see it on the dev side, so the data is there and it shouldn't be too hard to do. I think that would be good. Can we get World War II tanks in a true vision environment? So no is the answer. The maps are not designed for this. We could possibly try it in our new events mode initiative in the future. So glad that they're not going to be coming into World War II. I think the definitive answer is that it will never come to World War II, or at least that's what I've heard from some people at Wargaming. So hopefully it will never be in the game. That's what I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. We will never see True Vision in World War II. I don't think it will work, but sure enough, put it in a map or an event mode or something like that. That's absolutely fine. But as long as it's not in the actual mode. Can we get a medal for a tank kill of maybe over 1,000 meters? That would actually be really, really cool. I think it would be good. So they like the idea, so this could very well be something they add into the future. More medals, stuff like that, achievements, that sort of stuff, always cool, and it's always nice to have them. And of course, I've been trying to push for trying to implement a challenge system that is like your year-long challenge system, or something that's like a personal challenge system, which is separate from any of the time-gated challenges that we have, you know, the season pass, etc. Something that's like, you know, take out 10,000 tanks, you get a special medal or a skin that you can put on one vehicle, or something like, you know, I don't know, deal 5 million damage, you get a skin or something like that. Deal 50 million damage, play 50,000 games, that sort of stuff that is like kind of people can work towards. And even if it's not that generic, but more like, you know, if you play a tank 1,000 times you get a certain skin. I think stuff like that would be really cool. Stuff like, you know, challenges that can be added, you know, if you play 100 games during a season, you get, you know, 50 premium consumables or something like that. You know, just little sprinklings of added rewards that come along with the challenges, since I don't feel like we have any long-term objectives. And when you complete the season, it can feel a little bit like, well, I've kind of done the season. I haven't got much to do. I've completed the earn operations that we've had this season. I'm kind of just sat here for like 3 weeks, not really with any real reason to play. And I feel like those sorts of things just add a little bit of extra, like, oh yeah, I'll hop on, I'll try and get this tank done now. I can focus on these challenges, keeps you with something to do, even if it's not necessarily imperative, and it might be in the longer term that you're just trying to complete these objectives. And of course you can have smaller ones and stuff like that just reward you with little things. They don't have to be like huge developments of like, oh, you're going to get a premium tank for completing it, which would be cool if you have these big milestones during like, you know, generic things like if you play 10,000 games you get a premium tank or a random reward of a premium tank. You know, it'd be cool to have that, or a specific key card that you get from playing 10,000 games and you get a random roll on the premium tanks that we have in the game. I think that sort of stuff be super cool, and I'd love to see it in the game. So anything that is like, you know, that sort of stuff I think would be cool. I'm sorry we went on tangent, but I thought it would be an interesting topic to raise to you guys. I want to see what you guys actually think about that. Do you actually want to see that sort of stuff? Things, other games have implemented loads of this sort of stuff, and it definitely keeps you addicted to keep playing and just enjoying the game, playing and trying to get all of these exclusive rewards and show it off basically to everyone in the game. But next thing, when will the ram damage for the Weasel be addressed? When you hit a Weasel, its weight is so low compared to other tanks, so when they get hit, it's like a beach ball and it just bounces off and takes less damage. There could be some improvement here, but it's hard. If a tank rolled over a beach ball, surely the beach ball would just pop. And of course it's not made of a beach ball, it's made of metal, and usually when you smash metal against another piece of metal, it dents it and it's no longer what it originally was. I don't know if my idea of structural engineering changed, but of course, yeah, pretty sure if you ram a giant pole into the side of a thin aluminium sheet, it's probably not going to be the same at the end of it, regardless of if it weighs like a kilo or something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure that is ideal, but it's probably to do with like the actual game mechanics, because there's a lot on the back end that happens in wargaming, and so it's probably not a case of like this is how they want it to be. It's probably just a game mechanic thing that is like, well, if we change it on this tank, it's going to mean that we have to make a specific like, you know, a specific kind of piece of code that is only for the Weasel, and it's going to cause a load of problems. It's going to be annoying to do, and of course take away a ton of dev time, which is, yeah, it's just annoying that sort of thing happens. And of course, you know, you're ramming into like heavies for more damage than you're dealing in against the Weasel, which just doesn't make sense from a literal realistic standpoint. But there you go. Why does RNG change when you're the last alive on the team? Nothing changes, it's random. There is no supporting system that changes RNG like that. There you go, finally we can all stop talking about the fact that there's random, you know, RNG is suddenly the reason why you're losing games. No, it's probably because you just got the unfortunate bad team, or you played badly. These are some of the things that I had to deal with when I was rubbish at the game, or alternatively, I still have to deal with them. There's so many times where, you know, in games you kind of get ransacked by people, you know, you have a bad game. It's usually easier to blame the RNG in the game rather than it is to, you know, just blame the fact that maybe you misplayed, or, you know, your team are just bad, and you have to accept the fact that sometimes that is the case and you just had a bad game. RNG definitely does not exist, or preferential RNG, the sort of, you know, RNG that changes. Do you know how much of a development that would have to go into doing that for specific and individual players? There's loads of people like, oh yeah, see, you know, there's clowns on YouTube that are like, yeah, there's specific RNG that console community contributors get and stuff like that. Honestly, there's some clowns out there, but of course, they always tend to forget the fact that a lot of these players played way before they became community contributors and probably had better stats when they weren't. Yeah, everyone seems to miss out on that, but, you know, apparently RNG definitely changes. Yeah, I don't believe them. That is, of course, what they'd say. Yeah, hopefully you guys aren't that. If you are, consider your options. Try and test it out yourself. Yeah, RNG baiting is just not a thing. Anyway, is it possible to have a terrain altering mechanic? deploy your plow and move terrain and get behind it. This would be something cool, and they'd need to discuss it and see if it's something they could push the game to new experiences. Changing terrain is very complicated. It takes a lot of engineering and time. So of course it would not be something we see in the next year, probably not in the next 2 years, probably maybe not even in the next 3 years. It would probably take a long time to develop, and it would be like the big, huge update where it kind of changes the whole physics engine. It would probably be when it comes to the point where, you know, the older consoles get like removed and some of the more kind of powerful gaming like systems that we have, like the Xbox Series X. And probably when we get the next kind of installment of new consoles is probably when they'll start thinking about, you know, phasing out the older consoles, where, you know, they just say, you know what, we're no longer supporting it like they did with 360 and PS3. And of course, yeah, hopefully we'll get some new mechanics when that comes. But the final question, the one that caused a ton of outrage, was AVRE. When is it going to be nerfed? It's just underperforming right now. It's not winning as many games as other tanks. It does have a derp gun, but you can't aim down forward. It's hard to turn. It takes forever to reload, and the dispersion is horrible. It's not as good as people think it is. It's just the impact of getting destroyed instantly. There are lots of tanks that are much worse. We did do an investigation, but we determined that we didn't see an absolute need to make any nerf changes to it. We can change it, but on the opposite side of the coin, how many people will get very angry that we are messing with a tank that they've earned? If it was really OP, I would jump on it and fix it right away, but it's honestly not. Did they just really say that? I'm honestly seeing pigs fly? The AVRE. Right, so first things first, let's take a pick at some of the comments that they've made, right? I'm going to be candid. I'm not going to spit any BS on some of the things. Like, some of the things are true. It does have a derp gun. It doesn't move forward when aiming down. Like, you can't aim down when looking forward. Yeah, it does have that. It's hard to turn. Is it? Is it really that hard to turn? I mean, let's be real here. Some of the, you know, FV215B183 don't have a fully traversable turret, which means that they can only move their hull. Same with the FV4005. You can only look 180 degrees. They have a derp gun. They can only move a certain speed around. The AVRE has both a fully traversable turret, and it also has the fact that it can turn its hull. And it's not that slow. The hull traverse, not actually that slow. So this, yeah, it's just not really anything that you can justify, to be honest with you. It does have a derp gun, but you can't aim down forward. Yeah, you can't aim down forward, but you could basically angle your armour. Yes, you can get penned in the side, but you get penned in the side. Oh, look, I've taken 320 damage from a medium tank, but I've done 1400 damage to them. Oh no, and then I'll just turn my turret and my hull directly towards the person. They then can't pen me. Unless, of course, I know the exact weak points and the RNG goes my way where I can hit them. And then the turret. You can't really pen it very well. Yeah, pretty good. It takes forever to reload and the dispersion is horrible. Takes forever to reload. Takes forever. Let's have a look at the FV4005. Oh yeah, that also takes forever, but it does 1400 damage. Don't forget, this one has HE rounds that also do 500 damage to anything you hit. Anything. Literally anything. Any player, anyone, literally could just auto-aim the entire game, survive, do 5 shots of damage, 2,500 damage for literally not even aiming, not having to do anything aiming wise. Yes, you could say that about the FV4005, but let's be real, 4005 doesn't have any armor. It's getting penned every single time it gets a hit. It has HE that can be penned, that it can be penned with. Can the AVRE do that? If you fire HE, it does no damage. It has huge amounts of spaced armor everywhere. Why they put the spaced armor in there in the first place, no idea. I would have just completely avoided using it, just put it as a visual and essentially made it a little bit more balanced so that at least you could trade with the AVRE even if you're a medium tank. Because right now, you get hit for 500, you deal 400 back to it if in a tier 10 medium tank, and then you're kind of screwed. Yes, I mean, it then just pulls around a corner, you can't hit it anymore, and then it's going to poke you, probably you're going to bounce, and then it's going to deal another 500 to you. So you basically just have to leave and do something else. So yeah, I mean, there's that. Now, the first thing, well, the big thing that I want to talk about is they're saying it's underperforming, right? So their characteristic of why the AVRE is underperforming. What are they using? It's not winning as many games as other tanks. Now, let's factor in a few things, because you have to think about it in a holistic sense. What do we actually have to think about? Because, you know, there are other factors that impact a tank just than it being very good. Like the fact that there are a load of tanks that are free to play. You don't have to pay anything. But in order to get those free to play tanks, you have to actually play the game and grind through probably 1,000 games or more. Probably more, considering the fact that most people chop and change tank lines and don't get to tier 10, they have to grind silver, they don't have premium account, blah, 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 blah. They're probably playing thousands of games before they get a decent amount of tier 10 tanks. Or you could pay 6,000 gold as a player with no games and get the AVRE. What's probably going to happen then? They're going to go into a battle, they'll deal no damage, they literally have no idea how to even go forward. They're going to struggle to be able to aim at all, they don't even know what auto-aim is. Of course, they're going to be bad. They would be bad in any tank. This is also probably not the case because in an E4, for example, you don't get the option to just buy it. I mean, you do, but even to buy it using free XP, you have to get the XP. So using win rate is not necessarily the best idea of why a tank is overpowered. You have to look at individual, you have to split out where the win rate is coming from. You also have to then think about the average damage, and also just because a tank is OP or annoying doesn't mean the fact that it has to be the best tank in the game. The whole point is that certain tanks have really annoying characteristics. For example, the Waffle 100 back in the day, it was super annoying. Why? Because it could clip out any tank in the game and essentially you could pen it, it would not be worth it for the person to go. But at the same time, it's ruined your game. With you not playing badly, you know, you could be doing absolutely nothing, but it's clipped you for full health. The player might then subsequently die. It was not good trade for them. They could have come out in a worse scenario. They've lost their tank, they've lost a TD, and of course they've traded 1 for 1. But you've been taken out. It was super annoying. That is why they changed it. Apparently, Wargaming, well, specific people at Wargaming think that adding in the AVRE and looking at just the win rate, given the fact that it's played by like tons and tons more people than any of the other tanks in the game at tier 10. You have to take that into account as well, that this is the most played tank, I believe, out of any of the tanks in the game at tier 10. The most played, and not even by a small margin, by a huge margin. So you just have to think about that. And of course you can see that on stats like on, I believe it's like what stars and stuff like that. It records data from people on World of Tanks. It is the most played tank at tier 10. And that makes this thing super annoying. Because of the fact that, you know, even bad players, even players that are new, even players that have, you know, they don't care if they win or lose, they're just going to basically be able to deal damage to you, whether they should have or not, which is the case with some of the other tanks. But at the end of the day, they basically made an FV 4005, they put armor on it, they made it faster, they made it super annoying to trade with. Yes, they made it not be able to look down when frontally, but that is literally it. I mean, an FE 4005 can't look behind it, so there you go. Of course, you could reverse side scrape with the AVRE, potentially. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they just don't look at the overall aspect. If they split it out and looked at the players that have played a lot more games in the tank itself, or the highest win rate, what sort of players they are, how many games they've played, and split that win rate out for players that have barely played, that sort of thing, you'll be able to see a better distribution of how the tank is actually performing, because at the end of the day, players with 100 games probably shouldn't be at tier 10 in the first place. So yeah, I mean, that's just my opinion. And of course, Wargaming apparently think it's absolutely fine. But of course, they are just looking purely based on the win rate of the tank rather than the other factors that come into play when it comes to a overpowered tank or a tank that is not particularly well balanced. But that's just my opinion. Maybe we'll do a full video where we look at some of the comments from you guys in the comment section down below, and I apologize for being a bit of a rant at the end, but essentially they made a tank that was horribly annoying. They made a tank that is debatably broken in terms of the fact that it is just annoying to play against, and in the hands of a good player, very, very powerful. In the hands of the majority of players, you know, good, annoying for anyone that comes up against it. Not necessarily overpowered for the majority of players or players that are new to the game for sure, but still probably a lot better than some of the other tanks in the game. But yeah, it's a tank. If you look at any of the tanks that were given away for free as part of a season pass, they all have a lot lower of a win rate than most of them in the game. The standard tech tree tanks, and of course the premium tier 10 tanks that you actually have to buy. Yeah, they obviously didn't think about that when they looked at it, but apparently it's an absolute fine tank. They're not going to do anything about it, and they would jump on it and fix it right away if it was OP. That's just my couple of cents on the matter. I understand that there are a few things that they tried to balance it with. They made it horrible dispersion, but remember, that's when you compare it to other tanks in the game. And of course, you can look at the KV2, but of course, you shouldn't just be firing when swinging around your turret like you're just slapping people up. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you obviously fully aim, and when you do fully aim, it usually hits. Especially with the accuracy that we have and all of the accuracy perks and equipment you can use on this tank. It's horrible. I appreciate this has been an absolutely huge video, but hopefully it will be something that you enjoy, and there's tons to talk about, and I'll be interested to see what you do think. But other than that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of the day, and if you have made it this far, stay aware for the short video that we'll do of a couple of TANKFEST clips and stuff, and I might sprinkle in a giveaway in there. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.